Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast for Australia. Well, I thought we'd just catch up on some of the typical maps that we look at in these forecast videos, starting off with the newest update from the Drought Monitor across Australia. This was updated at the end of September, and just looking back over the last month, we've kind of identified a few areas that could just continue to stay in drought. So we're pockets in parts of Western Australia, and then this corridor right in through here that lately has missed quite a bit of precipitation in interior parts of Queensland as well. I want to just jump from a 1-month drought monitor back to a 9-month, just to kind of see how dry this specific corridor has been over that time frame. We can use some of our satellite-derived root zone soil moisture maps to kind of see a similar picture. So I'm looking here overall at the kind of the similarities between each of these different forecasting metrics, observation metrics, to try to understand what our moisture profile looks like right now. If I just go to the month-to-date rainfall anomaly map, this would be the first 16 days of the month. And overall, the forecast models did a pretty good job from a couple of weeks ago, picking up on this corridor, some interior precipitation, some pushing into here, but overall a drier signal that was going to stretch along the coast and also hit around Adelaide. Now, I do understand that there was some pretty impressive storms that happened lately, including some widely, not published, but pushed around pictures on social media of some of the shelf clouds that moved in here as well. But I was looking at your satellite data. This is today on the 16th. Just looking around at just some of the interesting cloud features across Australia. First of all, we had some pretty good cloud cover across parts of New South Wales and Queensland here. And embedded in this, we did have some thunderstorm activity, but I was really interested as I looked up north. I know there's, of course, a famous roll cloud that moves across this bay here, but it was neat to see the sea breeze setting up. You can see the clouds just building inland here, really kind of a neat feature. Overall, though, as I just took a look at things, I did want to make note of the deeper low that is sitting off the coast. You can see it pretty well here in the wind field. And as we start to work our way into the forecast, I want to begin with the winds because we've got some very strong winds taking shape around a low that's right here on our southern coast. And those winds could be pretty gusty at times. We're looking at just here in the near term. Let's get an update on that. There we go. Just here over the next 48 hours or so, some of these wind gusts in parts of South Australia, getting into New South Wales and then just off the coast, will be gusting in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range. We're expecting some very windy conditions out of this. And then as you'll note, there's another low. Can you see it kind of showing up right here? It's going to stay south, but the winds down here are going to make for some very, very choppy seas, as gusts could be up there in the 60 to 70 plus mile an hour range. I just wanted to bring up those that are focusing on the next 7 days of precipitation, so you can just kind of get a good glimpse. And what's important about this is, as you note, we're trying to bring some precipitation into some places that could really, really use it, given how dry things have been lately in those areas. So let's kind of get an idea on when and where, and we're going to go straight to the high-res European model to get us started here. So we noticed the deeper low that's off the coast, one that's taking shape to our south. As we work our way through Thursday, very strong winds. Getting toward Friday, heavier rains possible in parts of, again, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania. We'll see how much of this rain can get in here into this part of South Australia as well. So that low continues as we work our way into Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and evening. And as we press this into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, it finally clears out. We wait until we get into next Sunday, Monday, before a front tries to clip up against parts of Western Australia here, and we're going to see that low sit and spin just off of our coast here early into next week. After that, that low could add additional coastal moisture into this region Monday and Tuesday, but outside of that, we don't have a whole lot of additional rainfall being added to this pattern over the next 10 days. So we're just kind of getting through this near-term forecast quickly because I want to stretch this out and look at the several-month forecast I have for you at the end of this. Okay, next let's go ahead and add up total precipitation. If we just kind of play this forward, we're looking at some places here in the European model over the next 10 days grabbing 30 to 50 mils of rain. It just all depends on elevation. It depends on the timing of that frontal boundary and what to expect. Lighter amounts the farther you get back to the west here. And overall, most of the moisture seems to be down here along the coast in Western Australia. So we're looking at some halfway decent totals here. But overall, this is not an overly wet forecast for the majority of our growing areas. I do always like to compare it to historical averages. Let's get an update on this. There's the 12Z run. And just take note that while we are, 5-10 mils above average in this area, most of Australia is on the drier side of average going forward in this forecast. But we do have a corridor through here that's to the end of this week and early this weekend, that's got a better chance of getting some rainfall followed by some very strong winds. Okay. In terms of probabilities, I like looking at these graphics because they give me a sense of who's got the best chances and who doesn't. So if we look on the drier side of this would be who stays under 12 mils of rain. It's the majority of Australia here. If we look on the wetter side of it, who's got a chance of getting above 12 millimeters of rainfall? Let's go out here and go back to that 12Z run and take you out over 10 days again. This is your map looking at those probabilities. So this is the chance at getting better than 12 millimeters of rainfall. Let's go ahead and step it up to 25 millimeters. And we've got this corridor through here that has the best chance of getting on the wetter side of average going forward. Could there be some really locally heavy rain up to 50 millimeters of rainfall? Sure. And we'll have to watch some coastal regions here for more thunderstorm activity and more of that heavier rainfall. But that's just a quick rundown of what I'm expecting in terms of precipitation totals and their chances. So here's the bigger picture, okay? As we look out over the next 15 days, we're being dominated by a pattern that's got a trough that's sitting here that's creating low pressure. But this ridge that's in place to the south is what's sending them away from Australia. It's changing the position of the jet stream. We keep curling up lows off the coast like you just saw, these that are sitting right over in this area. But all in all, they're not really positioned directly over the southeastern part of Australia to keep things really, really wet. They're happening between Australia and New Zealand. So thinking about that, that's just kind of the overall setup as we go forward into the next couple of weeks. So before I stretch this out even farther, I wanted you to see that. A couple of notes on the temperatures. Now, a look back over the last 10 days, you can see the cooler than average conditions that were here. We've had some patchy frost, some late frost, hit a few key growing areas. That's not well captured in this map because this is taking a whole 10-day time period and averaging it. But I wanted to point out how mild it has been compared to average, right smack dab in the central part of Australia. Because as we look at the forecast going forward, over the next, 5 to 10 days, we're just not seeing major cool downs anywhere. So this is out there day 5 through 10. I got these backwards. That is the next 5 days. This is day 5 through 10, and here's day 10 through 15. So again, there might be a cool down here if these lows continue to form off the coast, but near average to a couple of degrees cooler than average is what we're expecting. Remember, you can go to the website. Again, it's AUS_forecast. Come over here to the temperature plots, click on that, and you can look at any one of these three models to try to assess when and where the risk is for the really cold air, should there be some down here in this area, mainly due to elevation. You'll also pretty quickly see the heat that's coming into the interior of Australia, and it's also kind of fun to watch the frontal boundaries sweep through as well. So again, just a great tool to kind of keep you up to speed on a broad scale about those things. Okay, that's your next couple of weeks, because what I wanted to do is get a quick transition to this bigger picture, longer range content. So let's slow down and let's talk about it, okay? Here's what the European model's picking up on for the month of November. And as I look at this and I think about what it's doing, a couple of things come to mind here. It seems to be that we're going to be getting more low pressure off the coast, which means we're at times going to have better flow right along the east coast. And that is going to be partly driven by the trade winds that are to the north, okay, and these frequent lows that keep finding their way into this area. But you notice if there's a drier area, it's mainly across the south, the very far south. And even with that, it's not showing up super anomalously dry. But the European model is trying to plant the Madden-Julian Oscillation just north of Australia and then eventually toward the north and east of Australia. And that is just an area over which we're able to extract some of that tropical moisture and get it farther to the south and deliver some moisture across broader areas. So you look at the European model and go, yeah, I can make sense as to why it's a bit wetter. If you look at BOM's forecast for the month of November on the chance of exceeding median rainfall, where are we sitting? We're sitting somewhere in the middle, meaning that they do not have an overly strong sense of how this pattern is really going to play out and the way the precipitation is going to be delivered as we work our way through spring. So speaking of that, what's been changing this spring has been the strength of this La Nina. Now, we've been talking about it, what feels like for months, and the La Nina strength here, as seen in the ocean temperatures, over probably the next 60 plus days, that's when we're going to be watching this thing reach a peak. I think it'll reach a peak right around Christmas. And we'll have to just watch how these trade winds pick up momentum and then give it back. But I do not expect this La Nina to be an overly strong one. My narrative has always been it's going to be on the weaker side of average, but just how weak is yet to be determined. I will show you this. We do know that right now the trade winds, which made a huge surge about 3 weeks ago and then fell off, they're trying to turn their way back up. We're looking at something called the Southern Oscillation Index. That's a key indicator in the strength of a La Nina. The more positive it goes, the stronger the La Nina is going to be. So just as a reference point, look where we were with the previous La Nina in 2022. If I'm wrong and this thing comes way up here, then that's going to make these next few forecast graphics really, I think, have a better chance at verifying. But I've got an issue with this La Nina. And part of that issue is in some of the new forecast data. This was just released by the European model earlier this month. And what is interesting about it is that the new forecast plume for ocean temperature anomalies, to be honest with you, is kind of sitting somewhere in neutral, INSO-neutral conditions. You see, we'd want to have our ocean temperatures down here to be full La Nina and below. And of course, El Nino starts up there. So we're looking at this INSO-neutral outlook from the European model. What is interesting, and you're going to see this in a minute, is that despite that, the European model is still giving Australia better chances of wetter conditions for the next 7 months because we're sliding into a La Nina-like pattern. Now, there are other models to look at as well. This is one where a whole suite of models in something called the NMME is predicting the La Nina event. And if you look at the ensemble average in the black dashed line, it's a bit stronger than the European model on average, but the spread is enormous. Some models bringing in a moderate strength La Nina, some just staying INSO-neutral. So there's a lot of uncertainty about this, and I think we're going to have to get through the month of October and into November before we can truly see if the trade winds are going to crank up and send this thing down here to make it a stronger event than what is currently being kind of picked up by the satellite right now, the trade wind behavior right now, and where it could go in the near term. So I love this about BOEM's website. While I don't fully agree with their forecast, I think it is way too neutral. It's just a hair below average. All right. I think we're going to get a better signal toward weak La Nina somewhere in this vicinity going forward. What I love about their site is that they compare it to the other modeling centers. So we've looked at this dozens of times, but I like it. So you have BOEM against the Canadians, the Europeans, the Japanese, the French, the United States, and the UK. And notice by December, this will flip over for me. There we go. NOAA is by far the most aggressive. And in a minute, I'm going to show you NOAA's model, so keep that in mind. But it is by far the most aggressive. BOEM is the least aggressive. It's right there with the European model, the newest run from it. So we have to just think about what this could mean, given that the European made a major pullback. But understand that we've had at times stronger trade winds. We've got the ingredients in place to give us a La Nina. We just have questions as to how strong it'll be. Because by January, we expect it to be at or past peak. By February into March, really pulling back. And BOEM is pretty aggressive on trying to rebuild an El Nino as we play well out into next year. So we just have to think this forward and see what this could mean, because it's certainly a major driver of our longer range precipitation patterns. So knowing all of that and just getting an update on La Nina, I want to show you the newest European model forecast. Now, when you look at a map like this, if I were writing a textbook about, weather patterns and we got to the El Nino, La Nina section, and you said, Eric, why don't you just draw me up what a typical October, November, December or November, December, January pattern looks like when there's a La Nina? I'd be, easy. What you end up getting is trade wind bursts going this way, trade wind bursts going that way, a lot of rising motion here, and Australia tends to be wetter than average, like almost all of it. Okay, that's typical. It's also typical of other places around the world. China goes a little bit drier. We tend to see a wet corridor in South America here with drier kind of on the corners, one here and another one down into parts of Argentina. But that's what the November, December, January outlook is currently showing, kind of looking globally. Let's just go another step. Let's go December, January, February. I mean, you're still wetter. That's very typical La Nina, even though the European model is not calling for a strong La Nina. This is January, February, March, still wetter. We can go one more set, February, March, April, still wet. And the same thing's going on with the U.S. models. These are the probabilities of November, December, January of staying above average on precip. And man, they got you bullseyed. Better chances of not than staying above average on precip. This is what the December, January, February new forecast looks like. And this is the January, February, March. Now, you look at all of that and go, fine, prove it. And I 100% am in league with what you're saying. If you asked me, I do not think that La Nina is going to be able to give us the most dominant, permanent signal with trying to predict your weather for the next 7 months. I actually think we're going to have a lot of subseasonal variability, changes in the southern oscillation mode, which right now is almost zero, changes in the MJO position. We're just going to have to watch how that tracks low pressure systems and figure out what they mean, where they're going. But I wanted you to see the latest model updates, and we're going to give you a third model to look at. The newest one that was just released today comes from the IRI Multi-Model Probability Forecasting Group out of Columbia University. I'm going to actually zip in here toward Australia just to show you some of the data for November, December, January. These are your probabilities of getting above or below normal precip. This is December, January, February. This is January, February, March. And February, March, April. So overall, when you look at this, we get this typical La Nina thing. And I'm just going to tell you, be skeptical of this. I think all of these models have just bit into this La Nina signal. It's the only thing they have to go off of right now, and they're doing it. They're just staying aggressive with it. And the reality is, as we start to build in some heat and get into our thunderstorm season, we're going to be watching carefully how the day-to-day events really shape up to tell us when and where we're going to get precipitation. Overall, on the temperature side of it, you're going to see here that they've got, normal here, but they've got pretty aggressive. Let's go back to like the heart of our summer. There's some odd looks to this that I just don't understand. I think we've got more heat in this system than currently being forecast. So please just be aware of that. Okay? So that's your quick look at all of the new long-range model data. And we're going to continue to analyze it and just try to make sense of it and understand it. But we're very concerned about this in 2 other places around the world as well. And I want to show you what's going on in the United States. We have had substantial drought building into our Midwest, into our part of our hard-earned wheat belt, part of our corn and soybean belt. We've had in this area some places that in the last 45 days have not measured precipitation. Now we're harvesting right now, so no one's really complaining, but I'm worried about this. You see, beneath that, NASA models our soil moisture. And so beneath all of that dryness, we've got soil that has no water in it right now. And the risk is if this is still here throughout our winter, which is your summer, of course, and it's not corrected by next spring for us, this is a major drought signal on our most productive ground for major row crops here. So corn, soybeans, wheat, all of that right in through here. Now, if you notice, we're really wet in the southeast. We've had 4 hurricanes. We had Francine that came up and went back out like this. We had a tropical cyclone that came into North Carolina, went up to Virginia. We then had Helene, which came in like this, looped around and left, and then Milton just last week across Florida. In total, those hurricanes hit our cotton acres very hard. They also hit peanuts. They hit a lot of our crops that are grown down in the southeast, including citrus, cattle. We've got dairy down here. There's a lot of stuff going on. And right now we're thinking that all of these combined are looking at about a $300 billion price tag to get this all cleaned up. And it is a major mess in this area because of these hurricanes. We're setting records for heat in our southwest and record dryness in the midsection of the country. So when we look out there over the next 10 days and notice that we don't have much of a chance at precip, in fact, here's the newest update, very dry in this area, we're quite concerned. The other side of this is South America. Now, they've been waiting and waiting and waiting to get the monsoon to start, and finally we're getting a wetter signal such that the next 10 days, they've got chances of getting, 200 to 300 millimeters of rainfall in this area just in the next 10 days alone. So that is a full-on start to the monsoon. It had been extremely dry in this area, record dry. The Amazon was record low in many places. We had just a large area of dry air that was hard to overcome in this region. And that's one of the reasons why they've been so far behind, here it is, on planting. So a year ago when the rain started early, 35% planted. This year we're at 8.81% planted as of last Friday. They'll get another update of this on this upcoming Friday. So these rains likely mean very rapid planting will happen because of how quickly their soil drains. It's mostly a soybean crop that's going to go in first. That will be followed by a safrinha or second crop, which is mostly corn and cotton. So that's the major crops that are grown in this area that we're going to be watching carefully. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on those global issues. Again, I'll just leave you here on this global 10-day forecast map just to kind of get a sense of what the global patterns look like. But several things to be concerned about globally, and I'll just try to keep you on top of all of it as we press forward in these coming weeks and months. So latest update today. We'll talk again in a couple weeks. Thanks.